Breaking tonight, lawmakers in Washington are finally taking care of business.
Once this agreement arrives on my desk, I will sign it immediately.
An 11th hour deal has been reached and our nation is finally getting ready to reopen.
We fought the good fight. We just didn't win.
It never made any sense to me that we wound up in this situation in the first place.
ABC 57 has special team coverage of this landmark deal from the steps of Capitol Hill to right here in Michiana, and it all starts right now.
Covering South Bend, Elkhart, and all of Michiana, this is ABC 57 News at 11.
Well, tomorrow morning, the government will be back open thanks to a last-minute vote on the House floor. ABC 57 first broke that news of the vote on our 10 o'clock newscast seconds after it happened. Now the bill is on the president's desk. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Dorman.
And I'm Kim Chappell. ABC 57 does have team coverage of this historical event tonight. We begin with ABC 57's Karen Travers live for us on the steps of Capitol Hill. Karen.
Good evening. Washington has done it again, an 11th hour fix for a self-inflicted crisis. President Obama said the process of reopening the government will begin as soon as he signs this legislation. Welcome news for the hundreds of thousands who've been affected the past 16 days.
Mr. King.
First, the Senate overwhelmingly approved the bipartisan deal.
The bill is reported as is passed.
Then the House.
The motion is adopted.
The 11th hour compromise reopens the government, but the funding only goes through January 15th. It extends the nation's credit limit, but only until February 7th. And there are no major changes to the president's health care law, the main Republican sticking point that sparked the shutdown in the first place. Today, Congress seemed pretty proud of itself for hammering out a deal, but tonight there was little celebrating.
There's a lot of work ahead of us, including our need to earn back the trust of the American people.
This is pain inflicted on our nation for no good reason.
Washington ended its self-inflicted crisis, but it was a rough and tumble 3 weeks. Republicans waged a lengthy, bitter fight with Democrats and with themselves. Texas Senator Ted Cruz rallied conservatives into a fight over Obamacare that triggered the shutdown. Tonight, he lashed out against his fellow Senate Republicans, who he said
decided to direct their criticism, direct their attention, direct their cannon fire at House Republicans.
By one estimate, the 16-day shutdown cost a whopping $1.4 billion a day. That's $24 billion so far. It curbed school lunch programs, kept 800,000 federal workers off the job, and disrupted plans for millions of tourists and the businesses who depend on them. There will be new deadlines in just a few months, and all signs point to Republicans continuing their fight. Tonight, as he left the White House briefing room, President Obama was asked if this would happen all over again in just a few months. He paused and said emphatically, no. Reporting live from Capitol Hill, Karen Travers, ABC News. Now back to
And tonight, Senator Joe Donnelly talked with ABC 57 about this shutdown and what it means for us right here in Michiana. Senator Donnelly was one of 14 senators from both parties who worked on the framework that paved the way for today's agreement. We asked him if he thinks this will happen again in just a few months.
My first obligation was to make sure we didn't go over the cliff now. It never made any sense to me that we wound up in this situation in the first place.
And he says his focus is creating more jobs, opportunity, and success for Hoosiers. Also tonight, Republican House Representative Jackie Walorski is also speaking out about this last-minute deal on the House floor. She said, quote, "As I have said before, I do not support defaulting on our nation's debt. Tonight, I am glad that a deal was reached to temporarily avoid default and reopen the government, allowing more time for the House and Senate to reach a long-term compromise. However, without any spending cuts or budget reforms aimed at getting our fiscal house in order, I could not support this plan."
And while the government is on its way to reopening for business, many workers furloughed for the past 16 days may not get their back pay for at least another 2 weeks. ABC 57's Jesse McDonough is looking into that side of the story tonight with special team coverage with a look at how First Source Bank is helping folks right here in Michiana. Jesse, go.
Brian, because of the government shutdown, those furloughed employees haven't had a paycheck in over 2 weeks, and it could be another 2 weeks before they see any paycheck at all. So now First Source Bank is stepping up to help. Since the government first shut down, calls from furloughed federal employees have been pouring into First Source Bank. They are concerned customers, but also husbands, wives, and parents who are struggling to get by without getting their government paycheck for nearly a month.
People are just concerned about the day-to-day bills, their student or children activities at school, school fees, mortgages, car payments, groceries.
First Source Bank manager Ron Zeltwanger sees the hardships this shutdown caused for families right here in Michiana. A delayed paycheck means bills go unpaid and credit scores drop.
The shutdown, which has been going on for what, 15, 16 days now, we're concerned about our customers that are affected by the furlough.
It's why First Source Bank is offering a little relief in the form of a low-interest loan.
We wanted to do something to try to help our customers be able to continue to pay their bills, continue to maintain their good credit at a time where they may not be receiving a paycheck.
It's designed specifically for those furloughed employees. The bank tailors the loan to their normal paycheck so they can keep their household running even if the government can't.
They would repay that when they receive their back pay, or if they're not able to do that, we'll set up a repayment term.
Although the government is set to reopen very soon, this loan will be available for the next couple of weeks. Reporting live in downtown Mishawaka, Jesse McDonough, ABC 57 News.
And despite the government reopening, some folks say there could still be some lingering effects that will affect folks right here in Michiana. ABC 57 talked with a realtor who says fewer people are buying homes because they're nervous. Some have even called in to cancel their deal.
I tell the people now to just hold on to their money, just like my staff.
Sort of like there's a collective holding of the breath, and that is detrimental.
And the economist ABC 57 talked with says it's been like this for the past 5 years since the housing market tanked and the recession hit our nation.
Tomorrow morning, the stock market is expected to open favorably to investors. Experts are calling for a surge. Earlier this afternoon, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed more than 200 points up. The Nasdaq and S&P indices were also up more than 1% each.
And when that new deal is reached tonight, national parks across the country will reopen to visitors. It also means those furloughed employees will be back on the job, including the public information officer for the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. We are waiting to hear from them about the EPA's report on those dangerous sand holes found at Mount Baldy. That park remains closed while the investigation continues. Also eager to get back on the job are the reserve officers from the Armed Forces Reserve on Kimball Street in South Bend. Many have been furloughed and without a paycheck for 2 weeks now. Most of them are not full-time government employees.
Well, the progress in Washington has seniors here in Michiana breathing a big sigh of relief tonight. Many that we talked with earlier, they are worried about their Social Security checks, that they were worried they would end if the U.S. hit the debt ceiling deadline by midnight. Residents at the Buchanan Senior Center say that government check is their only source of income. Even with some savings, they say they need it just to get by.
I use Medicare and Medicaid, and Social Security, my husband and I both live on it. I mean, we pay our bills and food and what have you, yeah, just like a paycheck.
And those seniors say despite tonight's progress, they are still worried that they will be back in this very same situation come February when the next debt ceiling deadline strikes. And for 16 days now, we have been here with you every step of the way for your family. Stay with ABC 57 as our special coverage of the government reopening continues. Tune in to ABC 57 News tomorrow morning at 5 for the very latest from the steps of our nation's capital as our extensive coverage of the government reopening continues.